Hello, everyone. This is Brooke Sides. Please, let's start.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Brooke Size. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a functional medicine practitioner, board certified in holistic nutrition. So I have a private practice in Prairie Village where I see people for both couples therapy and also individual therapy. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner. So I work with a lot of different types of trauma, PTSD, stress. And then on the functional medicine side, I work quite a bit with gut and IBS, IBD, gut issues, as well as hormone issues, particularly things like PMDD or PCOS. And then I work too, like today's topic is weight loss. I work with diabetes and metabolism issues as well. But I'd say gut and hormone are kind of my main areas. Should I go ahead and jump in, Magda?
Sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I kind of combined this class into talking about healthy weight loss and also talking about setting intentions around health strategies in the new year, because there's a lot we could talk about with weight loss, and we will touch into quite a bit of it. It's also January 4th, right? And it's a time of year where a lot of folks are thinking about um, resolutions. What does this year look like for me? What do I want out of it? What do I want to let go of for last year? So we're going to talk about that a little bit first, and then maybe that will help kind of trigger your mind to have some context as we start to talk about nutrition around what might serve you the best right now. So one thing that is common for people to feel, or that I hear, is this quote. My biggest challenge is knowing what I want and believing that a goal is attainable and maintaining the discipline to carry out the tasks. And that is the challenge, right? We can know what we want to do or what might be a good idea, but how do we carry that out and get motivated? And sometimes our ideas around what our goal should be are ego driven. And it's hard to get motivated when it's an extrinsic goal, meaning somebody else. I've had people show up in my office and say, my doctor told me I need to lose weight. So the first thing in my mind is, okay, we have to figure out what this individual wants for themselves, because it's not really their goal yet. So what is their goal? Right? So how do we align our goal with our personality? And we know that it's the right goal because it lights us up, it will give you energy, and it might be the motivation that you need in order to get it done. So there's different ways that you can, and I should say it's not someone else's goal, right? That we think might work for us. It's the goal that already lives in you, and it just needs to come out into the real world. And so it's something that's truly yours. So there's different ways that you can look at goals. You can look at them as final destinations. You can also look at them as means to your personal growth. So when we take this perspective that our goals are the catalysts of our personal growth journey, then they gain kind of a whole new and deeper meaning. Then our goals will instead help us develop new skills, new mindsets, build confidence. They might help us learn how to deal with failures and discover our strengths and weaknesses, rather than being like, I do it perfectly, or I don't and I fail, right? Maybe it's more about the journey of the goal and how we ask for help and how we learn in the process. When we take on this perspective, the outcome often becomes less important than if we looked at the goals as destinations to reach. And we might be able to realize that what we're becoming through doing this new strategy and working through it is actually the ultimate prize. Like that there's a lot to gain through the mistakes, through the failures, through the kind of, oh, that didn't work. Like, how do I shift and change? um, and all the reflection that happens as we work through them. And so if we shift from what we're supposed to do or supposed to accomplish, and I say this because as we talk about weight loss, I like to get deeper than just losing weight. Like, why do we want to lose weight? Because it still is a little bit on the outside, right? I might want to lose weight because I want more mobility. Why do I want more mobility? I want to be able to get down on the floor and play with grandkids. Why do I want to do that? Well, it makes me feel young and it's fun. And that's where joy comes from. And then I feel fully alive. So it's not necessarily about the weight loss, right? Like that's a means to an end for more joy in life. And sometimes if we get to that deeper meaning, it's easier to stay in touch with the motivation, like the why we're doing those things. So finding our why, and you can ask the 5 whys, which I just did, right? Why do I want to lose weight? And then why, and then why, and then why. It's good to check in if our goals are designed to prove something to someone, and which means that they're coming from our ego rather than our authentic self. And then they're not really ours. And so they can become this like energy draining, soul depleting exercise. So finding our authentic goals, we can ask which part of our life are, or I can ask you, which parts of your life are you satisfied with? And in which parts do you see the need for change? So is it in career? Is it in relationships, hobbies, health, spirituality, learning, finances, maybe community contributions? And then what 3 areas do you want to change? So if you were to pick 3 from this list, what would they be? And then what specifically needs to change? And what might that change look like? So if you imagine down the road, what's the vision of what happens with that change? What does it mean for you if you make those changes? What does your life look like if you don't make those changes? Like you don't have to change, could stay the same, could not do anything different. What would that look like if you made that choice? Sometimes that helps reduce resistance, right? Like, oh, I feel like I need to make some sort of change, but actually, if I don't do it, that is a choice. I perfectly have the freedom to do that, but maybe we don't like that outcome either. Then my joints still hurt and I can't get down on the ground and play with kids. And that brings some unhappiness, perhaps. So these are just 5 questions that can be journaled about. I know this is getting recorded and I'm going through this kind of quickly because I do want to spend, probably the good portion of our time on nutrition and weight loss strategies. But I wanted to throw this in and you can go back and watch the recording. And here are 5 questions that you can ask. What's missing in my life currently? What would I regret if I were to disappear tomorrow? If I only had 1 year to live, what would I want to accomplish or experience? If I could become anyone I wanted, who would I choose to be and why? And if I never had to worry about money, what would I be doing all day? And then through that, you can discover any desires, intentions, or directions that might help you move forward that are coming more from like some deeper wants in your life. And you might list out, 3 to 5 focus areas that you can put your attention towards. Uh, Another way to kind of reach for this is that we can look at our values. And there are values like lists online if you look up values, because sometimes you have to kind of look at a list, or I have values cards in my office that sometimes clients look through to kind of identify what's my top 5 values. But there are things like community, acceptance, fun, growth, harmony, safety, optimism. There's all kinds of whole lists of values. And what are your top 5? Because that can also help guide you towards like, if I look at the things that my favorite memories in life, the things that evoke feelings of fulfillment, satisfaction, and pride and joy. And then I look at what I enjoy doing and I kind of look for themes. And then I look at my top 5 values. What ideas support those values in your life? And a lot of times this plays in, we find our wellness. We're going to talk about wellness today. And wellness is all of this stuff, right? There's financial wellness, there's emotional wellness, there's physical wellness, there's all the different areas, relationship and environment satisfaction. And as we go through strategies to support weight loss, they can be in these different areas. Like I've seen this happen for me after my second child. I was like going to the gym, I was doing all the things, and I just felt like I couldn't quite drop weight the way that I had in the past. And I had, you know, an infant and a 2-year-old. So sleep was not great. And when I started taking 5-HTP, which is a precursor to serotonin, I had gone to a functional medicine provider and done a organic acids test, and my serotonin was very low. So I wasn't sleeping deeply enough, even when I was sleeping. So I started taking 5-HTP, and it really helped my sleep be deeper. I realized I hadn't been dreaming for a couple of years, and I started like sometimes remembering more dreams and just waking up feeling more rested. And I started meditating again. And those two things, I started losing weight. So it wasn't about, eating less calories or exercising more. My body was depleted and it needed rest. And we know that if we're not getting good sleep, it causes insulin resistance. And insulin resistance can make it hard to lose weight, or it can cause weight gain. And so there was some probably subclinical insulin resistance going on and some cortisol and hormone dysregulation because of not having good enough sleep. So if I just kept pushing harder at the gym and eating less calories, I'm just going to deplete my body even more, right? But getting the awareness that like, okay, sleep and rest and meditation is what's important. I was surprised because I started to lose that extra weight. And so I think when we like look at our wellness goals this way, it gets a little bit deeper too, to like, what do I really need? Because deep inside you, you probably know what you need. It's just getting in tune with that and figuring it out. And it might actually get you towards some of the other goals you've been thinking about regarding wellness a little bit faster. I just threw this in before we shift into some of the nutrition portion of the class. Word of the year. It's fun to sometimes think of a word of the year at this time. And this can be a word that is just one word that then kind of feels like it's like the sun that's shining on all the areas of your life. And it represents your values and your goals and intentions for 2024. Some examples of words can be achieve, learn, growth, confidence, self-love, adventure, believe, family, connect, persevere, focus, peace. So the world is your oyster, or the vocabulary, is your oyster. You can pick whichever one makes the most sense to you, but that might be kind of a fun thing to try. Oops. Okay. So curious, feel free if you would like, and I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but if you have a question as we go through this, please feel free to put it in the chat box and I will make sure to check those at the end. So if you have a wellness goal or intention for this year and you want to put it in the chat box, please feel free, and I will keep an eye on that and make sure I touch on, any sort of strategies or ideas to support you on that. Okay, what do you think? Do calories in or calories out work? If you look at your Zoom little bar and where the the places for a thumbs up or a thumbs down, feel free to do that. What do you think? This calories in, calories out is kind of this approach that's been around for a long time around weight loss. Like if you eat less calories and you exercise more, you will lose weight. Yes.
I actually, the reason I mentioned it was I read NPR or someplace, they were saying how this was invented during industrial revolution in 1800s, when they started coming up with engines. So this, like it was about power, like how much input and output of engine, steam engines or whatever. So it was never even applied into nutrition. I just thought I would mention that.
Ah, that's fascinating. It makes sense because it doesn't take into account the human body and how we metabolize calories, and the fact that calories speak to our hormones, and weight loss is really more about working with our hormones. That's a big factor with metabolism. Hormones, microbiome, that's all the bacteria in our gut. What's happening there has a big impact on metabolism. And so we're looking at, I mean, there's other factors, but those are two big things. Liver function. We need to be regular. I've had a lot of people come in and it's like, gosh, I don't know why I'm not losing weight. And at some, in the initial intake, when we talk about regularity and bowel movements, they're not having them every day. That's a problem. So we need things to be working well with digestion, hormones, blood sugar balance, liver function. So there are a lot of factors. And today we're going to spend time on the nutrition and how it speaks to our calories or our hormones so that we are actually burning our calories in a healthy way. And it matters where those calories come from. So we're going to start by talking about portioning our meals and macronutrients. So this is a portion plate that is not, this is adjustable for different people. And we'll talk about like, how do you adjust this per your needs? But I always kind of start with this because a half a plate of non-starchy vegetables is a great place to start for pretty much everybody. The only time I would say no to that is if there's really more severe IBD, like we're having some severe digestive problems and we're not digesting all that fiber in vegetables very well. Then we're still going to have some, but we might puree it or put it in a soup. But that's a really specific area for the average person, and even a lot of people with things like diabetes or metabolic issues. This half plate of veggies is usually really helpful. And I say non-starchy, which means all of the rainbow of vegetables except for potatoes and the starchy tubers. Those have a place, but just not in the veggie area for now, because we want to make sure that we're getting a lot of basically high fiber, low calorie food that has a wide array of vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. Your vitamins and minerals are all those essential vitamins and minerals that our body needs. And then phytonutrients are also all of these hundreds and hundreds of nutrients that have various benefit in the body that we get from the rainbow of produce. So a strategy, well, we'll talk more about vegetables in a moment. So start with that half plate. Then most everybody is going to benefit from a palm-sized portion of protein. If you eat animal protein, that can be eggs. If it's for meats and fish, with fish, I would go wild caught ideally. With meats, naturally raised when possible. And aim for about a palm size, which is usually around 3 to 4 ounces and is also around 20 to 25 grams. And that's a good starting point. If you are very drained, sort of in like a burnout, adrenal fatigue state, you might need a little more protein. If you have hypoglycemia, like your blood sugar is you're getting dips that drop low, you might need a little more protein and more often. If you are diabetic, you need that protein and sometimes at first a little bit more, but you don't want to have too much all the time. And I see that happening, especially for diabetics who are really working on it, is that they start eating lower carb, but they're still eating too much protein and it's kind of messing with their blood sugar. And the reason for that, as we get into talking about carbs, protein, fat, is that your fuel sources are ideally carbs and fats. Our body uses carbohydrate and fats very efficiently for energy production. Protein can be used for energy, but it has to be broken down into sugar and then used as sugar. So normally with protein, we take those amino acids and we can only use so much at one time. We don't store protein. We do store some carbs and as much fat as we need to store. We can store about 500 grams of carbohydrate in our muscles and liver as glycogen. So we'll burn, if we eat carbs, we're going to burn some of it right then. And then our body's going to take the rest and replenish our muscles and liver with glycogen. And it's going to take the rest and turn it into fat for storage. Fats can be burned for energy, and that's happening all the time in our body. It just happens at a little bit of a slower rate than carbs. Protein, the body will break down into amino acids and use to build muscle, hormones, other tissue like cartilage and other tissues, neurotransmitters. So it's going to use those amino acids for those things in the body, but it's not going to store them. If there's excess amino acids, they get converted to sugar and burned as sugar. So I've seen this happen with folks who are measuring their blood sugars, that sometimes they do like a high protein and veggie meal and they don't really have much fat and they don't have any carbs. And they wonder, like, why did they get a higher blood sugar reading an hour later? Well, it might be that the fix would be to have a little more fat and have a little less protein, like have more moderate protein. But because they didn't really have anything to burn for energy, because they didn't need any fat, they didn't need any carbs, their body took that protein and converted it into sugar. And instead, if we had moderate protein and low carb, but we had some fats, the body would burn those fats for energy. And we burn fat slower, which can be good, and cleaner. It doesn't cause as much. It's kind of like we compare it to a fire. If you build a fire and you need kindling to get the fire started, right? But it lets off a lot of smoke. That's kind of how carbs burn in the body. There's sort of some like excess toxic stuff that has to be let off and dealt with by the body when we're burning sugar. But it's fast and we get that energy quick. Fats, it takes a while to get our body burning them, but when it is doing that efficiently, they're like the big logs. They burn slow, but they burn long, and it can help keep our blood sugar more stable. So with all that being said, some people do better with a little more carbs, some people do better with less carb. And so if you start with the palm-sized portion of protein, half a plate of veggies, then some additional carb, complex carbs, which is fruit, whole grains, starchy vegetables. That's kind of the whole foods places that we're going to get our complex carbohydrates. And then fats, which we'll also talk about where to get those. We can kind of balance that out. So there are certain conditions where we would do more low carb and some where we do a little higher. And we'll talk about that. But that is kind of a picture of where to start with building a meal. So with vegetables, we get healthy carbohydrates. We don't always think of getting carbs from veggies, but we do. That's the main macronutrient we get from vegetables. It's just not at a high level compared to a lot of other standard American foods like breads and pastas and pastries and all of that stuff. We get fiber, lots of fiber. And fiber is, it can basically, like, it has a lot of benefit in our microbiome. So it's going to be really good for our gut, going to be good for regularity typically. It also doesn't metabolize the same way that the other carbohydrates do. So it's supportive of metabolism. We also from vegetables get vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients. And I would aim for 8 to 11 servings a day. And that sounds like a lot, but if you look here at the servings, one serving is just half a cup of raw or cooked vegetables. So if you fill up half a plate of vegetables, you're probably getting at least 3 servings, maybe more. If you ate a salad, like a big salad, you're getting, a lot of servings of vegetables. If it's, one serving of greens is about a cup of greens. So there's lots of lists online of just like, what is a serving of vegetables? And aiming for at least 8 or 9 servings is a great place to start. I know I have a few numbers here, like 7 to 13, 8 to 11. The goal is, I would say if we can get towards that like 10 mark, that's a good starting point, 10 servings in a day. And you could potentially get that between 2 meals if you really kind of filled up your plate or bowl with veggies, or 2 meals and a snack even. Protein. Our body does not store protein, as I mentioned, so we want to eat it regularly. Every time you eat is a nice opportunity to get some protein. We usually need more every 3 to 4 hours, maybe even 2.5 hours. So if you feel like you're craving sugar, you're on the blood sugar roller coaster, I would start with having protein pretty evenly through the day. It's okay for a month to do protein at breakfast, have a mid-morning protein snack, lunch, mid-afternoon, dinner. After 3 to 4 weeks, we want to try to, usually then we're able to drop a snack, maybe drop both snacks and just do the 3 meals a day, or do 2 meals a day and a snack. There's lots of ways to do it depending on what your goals are and where your health is at. But the idea is like to kind of help balance your blood sugar by having some protein and healthy fat at, at every time you eat. Mentioned the palm size portion. So it might be 3 to 4 ounces of salmon or a few eggs. And then down here, there's some more protein options. So if you don't eat animal protein, you can go with lentils or black bean pasta. There's some black bean pasta, I think it's Explore Cuisine, that is pretty much just black beans, and it's got 25 grams of protein per serving. So it's a great protein source. Mung bean soup, lentil soup, those would all be good options. The main thing to be aware of is that when we look back at this plate, when we have plant proteins, there's some additional carbs wrapped up in them. So we want to count that towards the protein and the additional carbs, if that makes sense. So instead of, say, like having a potato, we might have a little bit of brown rice and beans and know that we're filling the protein and the additional carbohydrate. And because those are complementary proteins, we're getting all the amino acids we need. So that's the other important thing with plant-based proteins, is to make sure to have complementary proteins if you're vegetarian or vegan, so that you're getting all of the essential amino acids. And those are lists you can find online too, of just looking up complementary proteins and making sure you're getting those. Dairy is a good source as well of protein. Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, some cheeses. You'll get fats. If you're doing full fat, you'll get your fat in that also. So that would fit both those categories. And dairy, there's foods that Chris Kresser calls them neutral foods. And I've kind of adopted that phrase too, because I think it applies to some foods that really don't work for some people, and they're very healthy for others. And dairy is one of those, like good quality, organic, full fat dairy is very healthy for some people, and for other people, it's not at all. Some of that is genetic. Some of that is based on just where our health is at and what's going on in the body. Fat and fat to carb ratio. So this is where if we're eating more fats, we want a little less carb. If we're eating more carb, we can drop the fat a little bit. And condition-wise, if somebody comes in and they have genetic hypercholesterolemia, and what that means is not just that they have kind of high cholesterol, but that their cholesterol is above 300 and it was above 250 as a kid. So it's genetic. It's definitely looking like it's on that genetic side of being an issue. Then, and I've seen this happen sometimes, like with folks. Oh, there are also some people that fall into hyperabsorbers. I had a client I worked with for a couple years, came in for weight loss, lost like 150 pounds doing keto, really got weight down, but started to see like a real issue with cholesterol. Like it had already been a little high. And for a lot of people, losing that weight, the cholesterol just drops when they're eating. Like this person was eating total whole foods, very healthy, lots of vegetables. Like they were on a healthy keto. There's unhealthy keto also. They were on a very healthy keto approach. and their cholesterol was very high because of the high fat content of a keto food plan. And so we eventually had to start shifting to kind of like a little more carbohydrate from berries and high antioxidant, foods, a little more Mediterranean, and working to maintain the weight loss, but also get fats in that wouldn't raise cholesterol. For most people, though, that come in that have elevated cholesterol, it's due to a thyroid issue, or it's due to a digestive, bacteria kind of being out of balance, or it's due to sugar consumption. And so the first strategy really when cholesterol is high is to get into whole foods, get onto a whole foods plan, get the refined carbs out, and get protein, healthy fats, veggies in. We might also, though, if cholesterol is a little high, work on sticking more to avocados, nuts, seeds, olives. And those are all fats that are from monounsaturated or polyunsaturated, would be like your fish. So we'd work more on those type of foods to get fats and do less of the saturated fats, which are coconut oil, palm oil, animal fats like lard and tallow, grass-fed butter, ghee. Keep in mind that there is a balance. Like lard has a lot of monounsaturated, but it does have more saturated than olive oil, for example. And so we'd stick more towards those with higher cholesterol. If cholesterol is not an issue for you, then all of these are usually fine. Choosing from grass-fed butter, if dairy works okay, avocado oil, coconut oil. I use palm oil sometimes, like this time of year. I always have one day in December where my kids and I make grain-free cookies. So everything's made with like almond flour and coconut flour and honey and maple syrup. So there's a little more sugar in those, but we try to do them as healthy as we can. And I'll use palm oil. So that's a good baking, something that you can use in baking. So these are all options, just kind of depending on what you have going on with your health. I like this image. This is from Chris Kresser. And it just talks about like, well, how do I figure out how many carbs I need and what's going to be best for my health? And you can see that in terms of weight loss, this area at at low carb is where we would kind of start to go for weight loss. However, if these other issues are present, we want to kind of keep it all in mind. So very low carb is most helpful for severe blood sugar problems. That would include diabetes, neurological issues like Alzheimer's, epilepsy. That's where we're going to think about very low carb, which is keto. When you hear keto, they're talking about very low carb. I've had folks come in and because with everything else going on, it looked like they could handle that. They felt ready to do that without it causing a lot of stress, that had very high insulin, but weren't diabetic yet. And that has been effective for that as well. Low carb is around 50 to 75 net carbs per day. And that's good for weight loss, for regulating blood sugar, can be helpful for mood disturbances and digestive problems. Moderate carb, 75 to 150 grams, generally healthy. This is a good place to start. And it ends up being lower carb for a lot of people because this is based on what our body needs, not based on what's normal in the world, right? So some folks will get on moderate carb and it feels kind of like low carb. It's not really for the human body, but compared to maybe what has been eaten, it's quite a bit lower. So that is to maintain weight. If there is some burnout, adrenal fatigue issues like low hormones in women, if there's in cycling women, if their kind of cycle is off and it's not related to a blood sugar issue, then we might go here in this moderate carb area. This is a good place too for when I mentioned like genetic high cholesterol. And then high carb is really more for athletes, endurance athletes, very active people, pregnancy, breastfeeding, fast metabolism. It's hard to keep weight on then we might go more in this high carb area, but we're going to do it with complex carbs and make sure that we're eating the right type. So when we look at that additional carbohydrate window, like what are the foods that fit there? We have low sugar fruits if you're doing lower carb. There's some moderate and higher sugar fruits that might fit if you're doing higher carb. I would just say that with fruit, we want to stick to like a couple servings a day. This time of year, a lot of fruit is out of season. So looking to nature to tell us like what is the fruit that our bodies would be accustomed to this time of year. You know, we can store apples for a while, so those are good options. Cranberries, things like that. Fruits, they have quite a bit of higher carbohydrate levels than vegetables, which is why we say lots of veggies and then yes, some fruit, but you know, let's do maybe a couple servings a day. Legumes, lentils, beans, whole grains, those are all options, as well as in the additional carbohydrates, I would put root veggies. I think I had them on the vegetable slide, but I would put potatoes, sweet potatoes, yucca, all of that stuff here because it's pretty high carb. So we can use that to get our carbohydrates too. And then you may be saying, well, what about the occasional piece of cake? So if we go back to this, if we're at a party and we know I'm going to have a piece of cake tonight, it's going to go under the additional carbohydrates. So if dinner is, let's go with the traditional steak, potato, and salad. Is it possible to eat more salad? Or maybe like before you go to the party, have some veggies before you go? Is it possible to like take some olive oil to put on your veggies there? Or not, you know, you may not do that if you're going somewhere, but like take a bag of nuts or have some nuts and veggies before you go. So now you've had like a little bit of protein, fat, and veggies. You go there and just have the salad and, you know, a portion of the steak. And drop the potato because you're going to have cake instead. And that's not something, you know, we want to do every day because the potato is going to give you a lot more benefit if you had some of that than the cake. But hey, if you want to have a piece of cake once in a while, right? That's the way to kind of rebalance it so that you can maintain maybe your weight, maintain your energy and your mood, and not feel like, oh, every time I go do something social and the food isn't what I want, it really throws me off. All right. Getting into, so that's kind of making our plate. We can talk about some more strategies too for navigating, like, how do I put those meals together, or contextually, what does that actually look like? We can maybe do some Q&A on that at the end. Make sure to drink lots of water. Consume warm drinks like herbal teas and green tea. Can do things like bone broth for a little extra protein. Infused water is great if it helps, especially if it helps you to get more water in, get a little bit of nutrients from the produce in there. We want to aim for about half our body weight in ounces. I had a client, it was actually a teen, who started losing weight when she started drinking water. It was really actually pretty incredible. Totally stuck with weight loss. All she did was start drinking enough water a day. And this is really making me thirsty. But she started losing weight. So sometimes it's just figuring out that one thing our body needs to function better. So if you take your body weight in pounds and divide it by 2, that's about the amount of ounces we want to get per day. If we're drinking caffeine, we may need a little extra on top of that. If you take medications, you may also need some extra water on top of that. Lifestyle strategies. So I mentioned that one of the times I, was trying to lose some pregnancy weight, it happened when I started relaxing more, sleeping better. So we are a human being, not a human doing, and we need some time to rest and recover from all the things we do in life. So exercise is important, and I want to kind of talk about exercise just a little bit now. and then more about, how do we balance that out with some rest and recovery. We do need to exercise is going to help bring down blood sugar, bring down any sort of insulin resistance. It can really help our metabolism. We want to do the right type of exercise. So if you're not doing much now, that may look like getting more in. But for some people, they're doing a lot of exercise, and it may be that we need to also have some balance with like some gentle yoga type of exercise or more restful. But aim for some sort of movement at least 4 or 5 days a week. And that might be a walk, it might be some yoga. If it's hard to get more strenuous exercise in, there are apps called 7-minute apps. There's one I really like, that's a 7-minute app. And it will just guide you through 7 minutes of beginner, intermediate, or advanced exercises that you can do at home without weight. So that's one idea. Or getting in water, there's all kinds of options for that, but just important to think about like what gets you excited, right? Like what sounds appealing about exercise. Better to find something that sounds and feels good to you and do it, as opposed to not doing something because there's an idea about what it should be and that doesn't sound appealing, so then we don't do it, right? So during the pandemic, I remember like having that phase that a lot of people went through when we had to change all our routines and thinking like, well, how am I gonna, like, I've got 3 kids at home, I'm working overtime. At the time, my spouse was out of work because he's in entertainment. So I was working extra and I was feeling like, a lot of resistance around like, or negativity around how am I gonna actually like get exercise that feels like enough for me. And once I got my mind past that, I started doing like sprints outside with my kids, and it was super fun when it was warm enough. So we would do races. And I started doing like weight stuff with my kids. I would put my daughter on my back and do squats because I remembered seeing this guy at when I lived in Denver at the park, and he had his huge dog and he was like bench pressing his dog and the dog was enjoying it. And so just getting creative, I think, like what makes it fun, what makes it something that you might look forward to and do. And I think a lot of us figured out, there were a lot of people I heard, especially during those years of like staying in and getting kind of creative about how we do things for our health, that found some pretty cool strategies that might have actually been more fun than what they were doing before. So that's something to keep in mind with exercise, is just kind of looking outside the box and getting creative about how it could be enjoyable. Another one is like, I'm not really a runner these days, but if I do run, I only enjoy it if I run with someone. And then it's like run, walk, talk, whatever it is. But somehow I can, do a number of miles with a friend. But if I did it by myself, it would just be like a chore. So who do you do it with? What's the environment? And then we want to give ourselves time to slow down. Exercise is a stressor. It puts a little bit of stress on the body, and that is a good thing to have some of that positive stress, but we can have too much. So we don't want to push that too far. And we want some time for recovery, whether it's from our lifestyle, our, stressors, and exercise, all of that. And so what's the relaxation, grounding, or mindfulness types of things that we do? And I think that in our modern world, this is really a big question. Usually, most people that I'm working with, it seems, need some aspect of this because we might notice we are dealing with anxiety. Okay. Why? Right? Are we too busy? Is the mind just moving too fast and we need some strategies to help it slow down and get more present? Or we're tired a lot because we're managing a lot. So when is that 5 minutes we can really check out and not do the kind of checkout that we do where we just like pick up our phone and kind of scroll to check out, but like truly relax. Insight Timer is an app I like, so you can check that out. Insight Timer is an app you can get on your phone that has lots of like talks, guided meditations. It even has a timer with just relaxing sound that you can choose from. that you can do for 5 minutes. I don't know if anybody here has kids, but my 6-year-old, she will pick out like a sound and then we listen to it for 5 minutes in bed, and it's just a nice way to unwind. Or a guided meditation that's leading one through some breathing exercises. 4-7-8 breath is one that I recommend for breathing. It's inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. That's been studied to help shift the body if you do it for 3 minutes or more, from sympathetic into parasympathetic, which is where we can start to rest and be more present and relaxed. Journaling is an option. So lots of strategies here, but kind of thinking about what would be most helpful. In terms of these lifestyle strategies, getting caught up with my notes. What we think about, they've been, very effective in research in supporting mood. And this time of year, this comes up a lot, sometimes some seasonal affective disorder, some more like low moods as we go through the winter. There's a little more isolation, a little more darkness, not getting outside in the sun as much. So if you love this time of year, that's awesome. I just kind of hear on the flip side that it can be a time that's harder for folks. We know that positive thoughts alter immune function, decrease stress, and support a healthy pain response. And so what do we do to help our mind be more positive if we want those benefits? And I mentioned that I do somatic experiencing. So when we look at mental emotional health from a somatic perspective, what we're looking at is if we change the state of our body, then we change our thoughts. In CBT, it's looking more at like change your thoughts to change your mood. This goes a little bit deeper to say, yes, that's true. And we can do that. CBT is very effective. So we can change our thoughts, like we can intervene in our thoughts and change them. We can also look at, well, what do I do for my body to just feel good? And then my thoughts are naturally more optimistic. So that's where we get back to everything we're talking about today, right? Like nutrition that helps our body feel more balanced, exercise, physical activity, adequate sleep, mindfulness meditation practices, maybe some therapy or counseling or talking with friends or journaling, gratitude statements every day. So all of those things are things to pick from to also increase mood, and not just the other things we think about with our physical health, right? It's going to help our mental health also. So things to think about as you go through the day and the rest of the week is there a word that jumps out at you for the year that can help you with your intentions? Maybe you have a SMART goal. So SMART stands for sustainable, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and timely. Maybe there's something there that will help you, that's really specific that would be useful for you right now. Like just if it's drinking more water, and start with 16 ounces of water every morning. And just make that the goal, the SMART goal. Or maybe it works better for you to have an overarching intention. For some people, that is easier. It feels like less pressure and there's less chance of failure. So it's easier to stay present with it and kind of bring things in as you go. And then either way, it's good to think about like, how will you get yourselves towards the goal or the intention? What are the first steps? So maybe pick one thing to do this week towards that end. On this page also, I'll just mention this if anybody here is interested and needs extra support. I do a reset, a 10-day reset group program every January, and it starts January 14th. So if you want to check that out, it's really fun. And it helps people pick it provides a whole meal plan, lifestyle plan. Like we provide all of that and we guide people through it. But we also help just to individualize it and figure out what is it that we do need right now and how do we tweak and tailor this to our own needs. And I always do it with everyone. It's always a fun thing at the start of the year. So with the class today, are there any questions? Anything I can circle back to for you?
Well, I don't see any questions here.
Okay.
Well, this was a really good class. It was one of my favorites, I must say.
Ah, good.
It contained everything. It was amazing.
Good, good. Kind of touched on all the pieces, hopefully.
It was very good.
Good.
So are there any questions? You can type it in. I guess not. Well, thank you so much, Brooke. This was amazing. We will see you again in April, we said.
Yeah, yeah.
If we don't find if you don't find something earlier. Thank you so much. Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New